Hey everybody, we're re-recording the intro to this because now I forgot. Today, or to press record. Today we're talking about visualizing map control. All right, so map control. Wait for it. Yeah, get it? Control plus map. All right. So here I joked that I was not going to give the
riveting.
presentation.
Okay.
Great.
You know that that's not true
workshop.
because there's 40 minutes left.
That is it over? Are we done here?
It's funny. Waiting for me to
Alright,
come
GG.
back. Hey,
We didn't
there
even
I
have
am.
the
It's all a
test
joke.
yet.
Just kidding.
Yeah, come on.
Don't worry, viewer, I love you. All right, so we're going to talk about two models today. The wheel model and the zone model. So let's start in the wheel model. We have a straight line that bisects the map. It pivots around the center of the map, and your half is safe to farm. This is the starting location of the line. It's called the wheel model because it's like the line sits on a wheel. It's very creative. BSJ coined it on me, so don't blame me. Probably said some other stuff here, but I forgot. What? Oh, I have to talk about both? I thought I just talked about Feldy Daddy. Hey, zone model, right. So as the wheel model breaks down, we got to talk about the zone model, which is where we split the map into zones which circle farm opportunities. You control zones by being in them, having more power in them than the enemy. And zones your team controls are safe to farm. We'll go into more detail about that later, so don't worry too much. All right, so we've seen the starting case of each model, the wheel model and the zone model. This is where they start in landing stage. They change throughout the game via VIP, which is an acronym that stands for vision, wards, creep wave, towers, anything that gives you real, complete information on the enemy. That is vision. We have intel, which is using your mouse and your eyes to actually, we click on the enemy and we see what items they have, who's more powerful, that kind of stuff, and positioning where all those heroes actually are. The wheel model is best conceptualized as as a compass, where we have the pivot in the center and the line is magnetic. And we are going to move the line by placing little attractive pieces on the map. So vision attracts the wheel. It attracts this needle. All sources of vision do. Creep waves, towers, and wards. Sentries also, especially if they have invis heroes. So this is an example of this. So here on the left we have where it starts, at the center. And here we've placed 3 wards. We haven't made it too complicated, but we see that the wards have attracted the kind of magnetic line of the wheel to themselves. So now it's rotated, and now your team owns different parts of the map. You may notice that now Radiant owns Roshan. So we've placed wards, we've changed where our vision is placed, and that vision attracts the line of the wheel to change what areas are safe for us to farm. Okay. The second thing that changes the wheel is positioning of heroes. Heroes also attract the wheel, just like wards, but unlike heroes, they attract it depending on their power. So this is a little qualitative, and this is where the intel comes in, because we have to know who is more powerful and what their relative power is to other people. But the more powerful a hero is, you can think of it as a stronger magnet pulling that compass stronger. So here is an example of that. We have, of course, on the left again where we start. And then on the right here, we have Tint, who's a very powerful, strong Chad, who pulls the wheel very strongly, and so it stays right on him. So here, Tint would be a very farm position 1. In this example, we're still both on Radiant. And this would be me. Let's say I'm just a support, and I'm doing some dumb thing I'm feeding or something, and I'm way too down the lane. But because I don't have a lot of farm, because I don't have a lot of power, I don't really pull the wheel as much as Tint does. Right. And so the final state of it with us in these two positions is far favoring Tint. And so this is what we're talking about. Again, we're visualizing us both as magnets that are attracting this line, okay, as it pivots around the center. Now, you may say to yourself, okay. Well, what if I had a cloning machine? I was able to make 2 Tints, okay? Here, this would be a position 1 and a position 2 that are both very farmed, and we send them on opposite ends of the map. And they bend this line in a way that you can't really draw a straight line in between them anymore, right? This would be like if you're really ahead and you're pushing in. You push all the waves in. You have all this vision right up to their base. You know they're all in there, so that's the positioning aspect. You know intel. You guys are more powerful. You have all this information that tells you that you can't really draw a straight line through the center anymore. This is where the wheel breaks. And when the wheel breaks, which is a term that we're going to come back to again later, we need to switch to the zone model. Okay. So zones switch ownership based on who's in them. And they're owned by whoever has the greater power inside of them. So we're still using the same concepts as before. We need to know where heroes are or guess where they are. We need to know how strong they are. And we need to have vision to make sure that those guesses that we're making are correct. And so if a zone is owned by you, you can farm it safely, in theory, if you've actually guessed correctly. So if two teams have people inside of a zone, that zone is still owned by whoever has the greater power. So obviously, if we have a position 5 and an enemy position 1 inside of the same zone, the enemy position 1 is probably going to be able to exert enough force in the position 5 to still be able to farm the area safely. Zones, zones like the wheel, change throughout the game, but they change in a different way than you might expect. They don't just change ownership, they also change shape. So I know this seems complicated at first, but essentially, as time goes on, zones start kind of forming together as if they're water bubbles. Okay. So at first, laning, we have all these bubbles, all these small bubbles. Okay. So we have 6 on each side. In the mid game, we see that the lanes kind of form their own bubbles. They're in a different color just for contrast. The triangles have their own bubble. And then the jungle of each team forms one giant bubble instead of 2. These lines on the lanes show where the creep wave is. So each lane actually forms 2 zones that's separated by the creep wave. And this has to do with the vision that you get from a creep wave. And that is like the continuous vision is more creeps come behind the creep wave that's in front. And so that is why you can assume that you own everything behind the leading creep wave within reason. And then in late game, we have the lanes kind of form in with the jungle. And the reason this whole evolution is happening is because enemies and you are getting more mobile and are having a greater ability to move around the map and jump on people who are close to them. So obviously in laning, you're not very mobile, can't move very far, very fast. As the game goes on, people get blink daggers, people get bots, people have more ways to get on you to move to reposition. So we have to expand our zones. Otherwise, we might make a mistake of like, oh, I'm in the triangle and the axe with the blink is in lane, but actually you're in blink range. So you're still in danger. Okay, so how to use, right? So we've been over what they start as, which is shown here on the right, how they evolve, and now how do we use this information? Well, first off, why do we care at all? Because we want to have the most amount of map area owned by our team as possible. Now, if we are on the wheel model, you may notice that each team always owns exactly half of the map, which means theoretically you always own exactly half the farm. So there's no actual farm advantage between the two teams. However, in the wheel view, you still can have a team own Roche. So you can still build advantage in the wheel model. And the zone model, it's pretty much just grab more zones than the enemy and you'll be making more money, as long as you're farming them, of course. So we're trying to build that gold advantage. So if you look at the map and you can say, okay, well, each team has about half of the map. And I can draw a line through the center, through the mid lane, separating those two zones. Then you can say, okay, I'm going to use the wheel model then. Because what that tells you is it says that both teams are playing as if they're even, as if they have even power. If you're behind, this is a good game state to be in, and you should keep putting up your vision and positioning yourself in a way that it keeps that wheel line straight enough that it doesn't break. Okay. Because if you're behind, you should not be getting half of the farm. Okay. If you're ahead, it's bad because you're letting the enemy team get a chance to come back, right? Like they're getting farm, they're getting more map control. Obviously, in a real game of Dota, you're not actually getting exactly 50% of the farm if you're in the wheel model. So they're actually getting a little bit more from the lanes. So if you're ahead and you notice that it's looking like the wheel model, you need to break the wheel. And we've seen how to do that before. Really, it's about pushing in those lanes, getting vision right up to their base, really making it so that if you were trying to draw a line that like goes through your vision and goes through your strongest heroes, you can't draw a straight line that goes through the mid lane anymore. That's the wheel breaking. And then we switch to the zone view. Okay. And then of course it's just about grabbing more zones and trying to be mindful of, not trying to farm in a zone that's too dangerous for you, where your team doesn't own it. And so the thing that you always have to remember when thinking about this, because it seems complicated on the surface, is just remember VIP. So it's vision. Okay, you need to get some information every now and again. You're not going to see everything, but you need to have an ability to update your mental understanding of where people are, including the enemies, obviously. So you need wards. You need wards in locations where you want to start grabbing zones or moving the wheel. Okay. You need intel. Once the enemy heroes show up on your vision, you need to look at them, because it's not just enough for like your eyes to see that a hero exists there. Your mind needs to understand what that actually means. And so you need to go click on them, look at them, and try to postulate for yourself how strong they are in comparison to your team. I know that's not exactly covered here, but just try to ask yourself, hey, this is their position 3. Is their position 3 stronger than mine? And with questions like that, you can start building an understanding through practice. And then finally, positioning. You need to pay attention to where you are in comparison to the enemy team and your team, and try to use these models to guess where are the safe places to farm and where are the dangerous places to farm, and make sure that you're not putting yourself in too much danger based on the game state. So that's all my slides. It was fast, and I assume that there's going to be a decent amount of questions. So you can ask away, unless I did the presentation perfectly and everybody understands.
Do you think the top zones, that was like the one you mentioned for like laning, right?
Yep. So this is like laning, we have 6 on each side, and then mid game it starts splitting down.
So this is what I wanted to see. That is my question so far.
Okay. Yeah, so mid game there's actually 5 zones per side. And then late game there's 2.
What should you adjust when the other team isn't actually exerting the control that they should have over the zones? Is it okay to farm somewhere that's dangerous until they prove that they're actually going to defend it?
Mm-hmm. And that's where vision comes in, right? So like if there's a zone that you think, hey, they should really be controlling this, but you can see that they're not, then it's just kind of open. You can just walk in. I mean, if you're the only hero in a zone, your team owns it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I think pretty much it does.
Mm-hmm.
So is being in the zone consistently equate to owning the zone, or do you have to place wards? And if you place wards, whose responsibility is that? Is it always the supports, or would you do it on your mid?
Okay, so there's 2 questions there. The first is standing in a zone sufficient for control? So ownership of a zone is based solely on positioning, because you have to be like near an enemy hero to do something to them. However, keep in mind that there is a certain amount of guessing that you have to do of where the enemy is. Now, if you had map hacks, don't download map hacks, and you could see where the enemy is, then you could perfectly tell exactly who owns what zone. But what the wards do, it allows you to like take that guess into a certainty. And so typically, if you look at this, you may notice that the boundaries of zones are very common ward spots. And that's not a mistake, because you want to see when people move from one zone into another, because that proves that they're no longer in the one they left and that they are in the one that they went to. And so that's what makes those wards so powerful. And what was your second question? If I answered the first one.
If support should be the only ones who put down wards.
Yep. So you may have noticed that I didn't mention any roles, and that's intentional. Wards are free. Anybody can place them. So especially if you're a core in a game where it's very dangerous for the supports to go very far, maybe they're not very mobile, so they can't get out if an enemy comes in and starts like controlling zones again where you are. Then you need to just buy the wards and place them in the places that you need them to be. Don't buy all the wards, please, because your support does need some. Because we saw, obviously, 1 second. Here, right, that we can have like an aggressive ward, but defensive wards are still important. Because we do want to make sure that when we're...
So
like,
is this dire teams?
this is from Radiant. Mm-hmm. So here, Radiant's protecting their jungle while putting one ward in the enemy jungle. While you're trying to be aggressive and grab enemy zones, you got to make sure they don't just take an equal amount of yours. Otherwise, you're just going back to the wheel, right? And both teams are just getting half of the fun. Sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I do have a follow-up question to it though. So in like more practical terms,
Okay.
how do you and when do you go up to an area to take control? Because obviously sometimes you can't do it alone.
Yep.
So you would like, I don't know, let's say you're a mid, you just grab the rune and you're like, okay, you're grabbing your post 4 and
Mhm.
okay, we're gonna gank the enemy post 1 because it's more likely that he's jungling.
Mm-hmm.
So like, how do you implement this theory
Mhm.
into more practical terms? Let's say like after the laning stage. Because
Okay.
I feel like that's a big.
So, to summarize the question, it was take an example of like being a mid or a core, and I want to assault what I consider to be a current enemy zone. Like I want to go in and I want to take it, and I want to know, like how much power do I need to take over the zone? Because like I know I'm stronger than these people, but I'm not stronger than these people, right? So again, that's the intel part. Does that encapsulate your question?
Yeah.
Okay. This is where this is the entire usage of smokes. So the whole point of smokes in these aggressive plays is to try to subvert the enemy's vision so that they don't know you're coming into a new area and can't respond. And it also gives you an ability to drop vision to see more in the future. If you cannot see a zone and you don't know who's been in or out, you can take a guess on who's in there. And this is where it kind of comes to practice and needing to kind of go out and use these models in games and make mistakes. But unless you have vision over them, you actually cannot know who is in there and who's not. So there's always this kind of fuzziness to incomplete information games like Dota when you try to make a strategic move, because you don't 100% know unless you have a ward watching them. So in that case, typically what people will do is they'll bring slightly too many people more than they need. Like if I'm a mid and I'm popping off, I probably don't need my supports because like let's say that it's only the enemy 2 that threatens me, and I can see that the enemy 2 is bottom. So maybe all of them are in their jungle in this zone that I want to go into, but maybe they're not. Well, obviously I don't want to just walk up to 4 people, so I'm going to bring a couple supports just in case. So that's kind of like the implementation of the fuzziness, where it's like, okay, I'll do a little more than I need, but that it does kind of just come down to practice and trying to make sure that you keep that vision up, and to give you a like clear picture of the game instead of one that you have to guess. But you still will at some point have to guess the state of the game.
I have a question
Okay.
to that.
Okay.
So it's not enough for you to just go into their jungle once in order to control the area. You sort of, do you just go up there, let's say take kills, ward up, but in order to maintain control of the area, do you have to play on that side of the map?
Yes. So zones are only truly in control of a team if the team has somebody there.
So vision just doesn't fully equal to control.
No, because if you're not there, they can go and extract farm. Now you can then go and make a move on them. Like vision is still important for like planning moves of like, oh, they're here. We know like, okay, they have 3 heroes here. If we move these 2 heroes here, we would have enough power to take back over the zone. But if you're not there, you can't hit them, right? I mean, you do need to be in range. And so that's where like the requirement of being in the zone to control it truly comes from. However, because the enemy doesn't see you fully and you don't see the enemy fully, there is a degree of like, you don't know exactly which zones they control at an exact time. And that's where the vision game is really important, because the enemy, the team who has a better understanding of who controls what zone at exactly what time is able to capitalize more on enemy heroes being outside of a zone that they want to farm, essentially.
Okay, so this was under the assumption that if you're ahead in the game, you're trying to like rotate over, assert dominance, take areas. But what if you're behind?
So if you're behind, it's really about trying to unbend the wheel back to being straight. The zone, like you can always think of it, the map in terms of zones, but it can be a little much if you're just starting out on learning map control. So I urge you, if you feel like the wheel is bending towards you, just try to bend the edges back out. And what you're actually doing here is you're pushing top and bottom, and you're trying to exert pressure on top and bottom, and vision on top and bottom, and plays on top and bottom. And because top and bottom are so far away from each other, the enemy can't respond great to both egresses at once. It's not going to work all the time, because hey, if you're like 30k down, then maybe they just have like 2 people who can each individually kill all of you. You do have to kind of practice it to see how can I get out of my base, but that's kind of a topic for another time, I think. But yeah, really, it's if you feel you're behind, typically the wheel is bending towards you in this way, right? So here you would be dire if you're behind. You're really just trying to unbend the wheel, get it back out to being straight.
So lanes are the best way to like regain control, and
Yes.
because that will eventually lead you to take back your triangle or jungle.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is because the creep wave is a mobile like circle of vision. And so it's like a moving ward, and somebody has to come up and deal with it, or it hits their tower for free. So like eventually somebody on their team will come up and have to hit your creeps, and they will give you in that moment vision, right? So it's a moving unit of vision, which is why it's so powerful to push out those side lanes to regain control when you're behind, straighten out that wheel.
If I'm position like X, is there like a certain like zone I should be focused on?
It's not so much position as it is your relative power to the enemy. It's like you never want to be in a position where you're not very powerful and you're in a zone where somebody who is powerful could just easily come over and kill you. So this, like very, very commonly, supports don't have a lot of power by themselves, but when they're with others, they kind of multiply others' power. We don't have to get in exactly how to calculate it, because that's its own totally complete thing. But just assuming that we know the relative power of a group of people, we want to make sure that we can all leave in time before like a group of enemies with greater power is able to come into our zone and threaten us. So it's less about position and more just about like how everybody is compared to their counterpart in the enemy team and where everybody is.
But let's say I'm a post 4
Yep.
who is pretty good at pushing out waves.
Mhm.
Is that a way for us to regain control? And is it bad if I die? Let's say after I pushed out several waves.
So, okay, this is a tiny bit out of scope, but I'll try to put it in the context of this. So the question was, let's say that I'm in position 4. Let's say I'm a Jakiro. And so therefore I have an easy ability to push out lanes and maybe help my team. You know, that wheel's bent against us. I want to come back. I want to push the waves out so we get that mobile vision, right? Okay. The reason why it's okay for Jakiro to do that compared to like a Bane is because you can enter a zone that maybe is too dangerous for you or will be about to be dangerous for you. Give the enemy vision of where you are. Show them that they might be able to come back into that zone and take it. Do something to kill the creep wave very quickly and then leave. And so that's great, right? Like anybody pushing the wave is great as long as you don't die. Jakiro can do it in areas where, or any 4 who can push, can do it in zones where an enemy might be closer than for other supports. So it might be best for me to show like a picture. And I might have to reshare. Or I might be able to do... Okay, I mean, I can just do it with the mouse. Okay. So, you know, let's assume that in the or here, we'll go to Migin. Let's assume that in the triangle here is a Faceless Void 1. He has enough items that even without ulting you, he can just kill you. If I was a Bane and the creep wave was, let's say, up here, it's pretty close to the triangle. Now, we don't have the mobility yet for Faceless to fully control this entire area like he would in the late game, but he still could just walk over. But there is a time associated with that action. So if I wanted to go here as a Bane and attack the creep wave, I'm giving him vision for long enough for him to switch zones and exert that that power over me. But Jakiro obviously doesn't. These heroes that push fast doesn't. And so that's why it's okay for supports to be far up and pushing these dangerous waves. Now, the reason why we usually want supports to push the really dangerous areas, and dangerous areas are defined, by the way, as zones that we don't have a lot of information about areas around them or the zone itself. So if we had complete information, we know where all the safe and dangerous areas are because we know where all the enemies are. But if there's no vision in this triangle, there's no vision in mid, and there's only kind of middling vision up here in this kind of like shallow jungle of Dire, as a Radiant support, I don't really know where they are. As a Radiant anything, I don't really know where they are. So I have to kind of assume the worst, that they're like in this triangle zone and that they could come over and mess me up. And so that's why we like to send supports out to take this really dangerous creep farm that pushes and gives us more map control. And if they die, it's not as big of a deal because supports aren't expected to, although there's a lot of nuance to that. But in general, supports are going to give less gold, less XP, and their death means less because it's not like the enemy 4 is going to be farming super hard while they're dead. Like if I was a 1 and I died, the enemy 1 is going to farm. And so now not only have I given the enemy gold and XP directly, but I'm also losing the ability to farm while I'm dead. And so that's a big hit to my team. So if somebody has to go up and push that wave, we want it to be a support, but we don't want it to be a support who would take too long such that it's essentially guaranteed they would die. We just want like a chance that they would die, but not like a super high chance. And I know that's not like a perfect answer, but it's very game and situation specific. And that's where vision and intel come in, where we need to see the enemy and then we need to look at them to try to get a good understanding of their capabilities, to form a good understanding of who should own what zone and how fast can they move between them. Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
Good answer to your question? Okay.
All right, I have a question actually. So this might be a bit like of a special occasion, but there's been times in my more like lower level pubs where like my entire team just dives the enemy triangle like 50 minutes into the game and then they die. Mm-hmm. And like I understand it's a very specific situation and it's like not a really good thing, but I'm just curious, is there anything from this that I can apply that would like help me with those situations. But because I can't help my team
Mhm.
because I would just feed as well,
Mhm.
and they're not gonna
No,
stop doing it. So yeah,
yeah, for sure. Definitely there is, right? So if your team is going to go do something dumb and you decide not to follow, the next question is because always in Dota, we're trying to solve the question of how can I personally have the most impact? And then we go out and try to do it. And sometimes we're going to be wrong, and sometimes we're going to be right, and sometimes we're going to lose even though we have a lot of impact. But really, we want to maximize our impact as much as we can. So if the enemy is going to go dive the triangle, first off, we're going to get vision, right? If the enemy is there and they kill them, we get vision. And so what you want to do is consider like typically you're going to want to push the side lane that's furthest from them because that's going to have the biggest impact on like this wheel moving right against them and start kind of bending against them because we always want to break the wheel against the enemy. So yeah, I would say just push the side lane furthest from the triangle that your team is invading as a general answer. As a more specific answer, you can think of the most dangerous zone that seems dangerous to you because you don't have sufficient vision that you might be able to get into if like a ton of people end up being in the triangle.
right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you would then be able to go into that area and place vision. So in the future, your team has a better idea of how people are moving between zones and are able to more safely push the creep wave.
Right, yeah,
So
that makes sense.
one of those two. Yep. Let's do 2 more questions because the NA tourney is about to start. If there are 2 more questions.
What is VIP?
Yep. So VIP is an acronym that stands for Vision, Intel, and Positioning. It's the 3 things that impact the state of the map. So vision is what we see. It's how we gather true information that we can make guesses on. Intel is actually looking at the heroes that show up, looking at our own heroes, looking at the enemy heroes, understanding their level, their items, their cooldowns, and what that means in terms of relative power to each other. And positioning is just where are our 5 heroes and where are their 5 heroes. And so these are the 3 things that impact the state of the map. One more question? Anybody? All right. Oh,
There is also like another terminology, like the wheels that break.
mhm.
Switch to zone
Yeah,
view.
sorry. Yeah, okay. So that comes from this slide here. So the whole idea with the wheel, and you're recording, so you can go back and see the presentation.
Sorry.
If you missed part of it. No, it's okay. It's perhaps good to review briefly. The wheel is supposed to be straight. It's supposed to be the straight line that lies in a wheel that rotates as things happen. However, I give rules that like try to inform you how this line should move. And there will be times when those rules end up giving you a curved line. And that's what we mean by the wheel breaking. It's no longer like appropriate to say that each team has half the map. We kind of have to say that one team has a lot more. And so that's when we switch to the zone view because it's much more accurate.
Okay.
But I would just watch the replay if that's still maybe a little confusing and message me questions if you have any, because I think we're over time now. So
Okay, I will.
Oh, sorry.
oh sorry, did you want to? I mean, like if you guys want to leave for the tourney, that's fine. I'll answer questions for maybe like 10 more minutes and then call it if anybody has any remaining ones.
Yeah, we will have a recording.
Yeah. So if you want to leave, leave. Of course, you could have done that anyway. But I'm now giving you social permission to, I suppose.
So I was thinking about a very common scenario that I've met in my low-level pubs. So you're stuck in your base,
Yes.
and we often talk about the probability to come back.
Yep.
So how do you get out of your base?
Okay.
What items can help you do that?
Okay.
And which heroes could do it safely? Is there any particular like hero who could do it, or any particular items who could do it?
Okay, so let's start with the most general and the first part of that question. So the question is, okay, Calamity, I'm stuck in my base. Tint's threatening me on both ends.
Oh, I know.
And and you know, like, okay, I want to break the wheel. So the first thing is, how do I get out of my base? So this is kind of getting more into specifics, but some recommendations I can make. If they have vision on both ends, you can try to smoke out and try to like skip past their waves, try to get into their jungle, try to get vision up. Just being really clever about using smoke to try to get past them can help a lot. If you're a core, you can consider Shadow Blade. If the game seems like it's a game that you'll have to be exerting a lot of kind of sneaky and dangerous, you know, zone grabs. Glimmer Cape can help as well. I've seen people go into the trees as support and like use Quelling Blade to go all the way down the tree line and like pop out behind like their kind of line of control.
So basically, there's always like a way.
Yes.
Like
Just make sure you have TP, please. Like I mean, like anything's better than just sitting in your base and doing nothing. As long as your team has like sufficient D push and you're not that D push, like don't leave if you're the person who has to D push. Then you can just be as creative as you want with trying to like sneak out of your base in a weird way. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and you learned. So
what about TP boots? I've seen you build them a lot in your games.
Yeah, so TP boots allows me to. Okay, so I build boots to travel a lot because typically people will play kind of in this in this kind of center of the map, and they'll ignore the side lanes. TP boots allow me to do what these double tints are doing here, where I'm able to push 2 lanes at once and break the wheel really effectively as a solo player, while still being able to show up to team fights.
So that's one of those items that can help you.
Yes. So the next question was, what items are good? It's very dependent on like your hero, your role, the game. But I found TP boots to be effective. Blink can be effective. Shadow Blade can be effective. Glimmer Cape can be effective. Essentially, if it allows you to be like subversive to vision, like they can't see you, it's hard to find you. If it allows you to be more mobile, it's probably going to allow you to get to zones that you might not be able to if you did not have those items.
So I remember you teaching me about a way of like pushing out the lanes as well, because it's not as easy as like going up there and essentially pushing out every creep wave. You kind of have to be a little bit smarter about it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of learned it the hard way that that sometimes you have to skip a wave.
Yeah. So again, this is getting a little bit into the mechanics and execution of the model, which is more practice. But for this specific question, it was asked, like, how do I push waves? You don't want to be predictable. Okay, if you become predictable, you're easy to kill. And so the reason why it's sometimes prudent to push a wave, and then wait in the trees, and then go kill the next one, or just like wait like 2 waves and then go kill the next one, or blink into the trees and walk to the next one, is it because it puts a lot more fuzziness in the enemy's like capability of knowing your positioning, and because that they can't make as informed decisions and like, you know, capturing you, killing you, you know, grabbing zones that you might be going for that they don't know you're going for yet. So it's a way to kind of keep ahead of them by staying unpredictable. But you always want to push lanes as fast as your hero can, and stay unpredictable while doing so, because you are giving the enemy vision of where you are.
So what if you smoke up and use your abilities on the waves? Because you can use abilities while smoked.
I think that'd be fine, although so the question was, what if I use a smoke and as like a support and I have an ability that would kill the wave?
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think of Jakiro immediately,
Yeah.
but you would have to have the talent to kill the wave. It's okay, but I would urge you to mostly use smokes to get into places where you need to ward, which is usually these junctions between zones. Placing the wards, and then on your way out, like blowing up, killing a creep wave or two, and then like TPing to where you want to be. Instead of using the smoke itself, the smoke time itself to push the wave. It seems a little wasteful. Because smokes are on a very long cooldown, and you can't use all the smokes just for like these clever little plays on your own.
Makes sense.
Yep.
That's all for me.
Oh, sorry. And then the final part of the question was, I'm stuck in my base. Which heroes are best at pushing out? Typically, the best heroes for coming back when you're behind are heroes that have high mobility and can push waves quickly. These don't have to be in the same hero because you can itemize to have better mobility or like subversiveness. So like if I'm playing Jakiro, I can build a Glimmer Cape, and that helps me to solve the issue of like I don't have really mobility on Jakiro, but I do have a way to push waves. So if you're on a hero that is mobile or can push waves, and it seems like you're going to be in a game where you need to be really sneaky and pushing waves and trying to kind of straighten out that wheel, I would strongly consider thinking about itemization that gives you the other half of that. So like if you have mobility, look to solve the speed of pushing out waves. If you have speed of pushing out waves, look to solve that mobility / subversiveness. Yep. So I can probably take one more question, then I'm going to call. There is one. Otherwise, I can just wrap up now. Okay. So yeah, in answering these questions, you might think to yourself, oh, well, this is all theoretical. It's all speculative. It doesn't really seem useful because he hasn't told me what to do in a specific game. The whole point of this is to try to give you a framework in which to practice, right? So it's a way to think about it and be like, okay, do I know who owns what zone? Or if you die in a zone that you thought you were safe in, why? What part of VIP were you missing? You probably were messing up one of those three. And so it gives you a way to think about the game. The wheel is much more simple than the zones, but both are a nice kind of self-consistent way to look at the map, to view the game, and to try to grow your game sense and map awareness in Dota. So that's it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the workshop.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.